So the burnout journey was a interesting thing for me too, because nobody really in my life had ever talked about burnout. So I didn't know what it was until afterwards. It's interesting because I got let go. The next day, I was so grateful that I didn't have to go in there anymore.
Okay, hi Danielle, and welcome to Peace Unplugged.
Hi, thank you for having me.
You were engaged with HR in your career, weren't you?
Yes, I was in HR for about 20 years, in corporate probably for about 25. So, yeah, it's been a journey.
Okay, so tell me a bit more about that.
Sure. So I worked for some pretty big Fortune 500 companies during my HR career. I was in HR department of one at sometimes because I was in smaller locations of the organizations, but then also most recently I was part of a department of about 30, 35. So I was hired as a talent acquisition leader. I was a generalist prior to that, but recruiting's always been a passion for me. So I was hired on for a new manufacturing facility that was opening up, and my team hired about 1,500 people in less than a year. So it was a lot of work, a lot of passion, a lot of late nights and things doing interviews, tons of interviews, so many interviews. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. I've never been more passionate about an organization or a job in my life. I was extremely bought into the organization, and I was there for about 7.5 years. About 5.5 years or so, I started feeling like I knew what I wanted to do something different, but I didn't know what it was. It was probably less than 5 years later, 'cause usually about 3 years I get an itch. So I started thinking about it, but I couldn't figure out what it was. I've always wanted to go into business for myself, but I never knew what that was going to look like either. So I loved the organization so much, and it felt like my baby because I was employee number 45, and growing it to over 1,500 people was, amazing. But also, I'm cut out for like the smaller organizations because I like to know everybody. I like to be able to talk to people and know them. So I did feel as the organization grew, it was a little frustrating to me that I don't know everybody, but I always still, said hi, how are you? Whenever I would see people, even if I didn't know them, just because that's who I am as a person. Well, the organization went public. And once it went public, things started to change. It was all about people in the very beginning. I mean, they had the best benefits. They always had, at 2 o'clock, they would have a coffee break where you could just sit and chat with each other about personal things, work things, whatever. So it was a big difference compared to like the American corporate environments that I was in before. Like if you were seen, stopping to talk to somebody, what are you doing? Why are you wasting your time? But here they recognize the collaboration and how, it was so important. So it was actually part of the culture. Well,
Yeah.
then as the organization became public, I started seeing a lot of things that changed. People weren't on the priority list anymore. I mean, they still had great benefits, but the accountability wasn't there. It was a lot of like, we need to hold back this information because our board of directors, we don't want the shareholders to get a hold of it. So like, how are we going to like communicate this? So it really affected my team because my team was getting ready to hire 1,300 people again for second shift. So it was, we initially started out recruiting for 1,300 that were getting ready to start in a couple months. And then all of a sudden they, were like, yeah, we're going to hold off a little bit and wait until September to hire them when we had initially told everybody they'd be starting in June. So, these are people and we're out
Yeah.
there trying to recruit them. And, my team was doing what they needed to do to get the job done, but then things changed. And as we know, business, things change. But it's like, that's a big change. Like 1,300 people, delay of the start of the shift. That's a
Yeah.
big change. You know what I mean? So you should have seen that coming a bit earlier, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that, and then I also had a former friend who reported to me, and our friendship fell out. And so then that started turning into a bullying type mobbing situation. She filed a complaint against me, so I had to go through the investigation. I still don't know what the complaint was. The HR director wouldn't tell me. They found nothing that I was doing. So, I mean, that was the result of that. And I had to officially terminate her in August of 2023 because she was undermining me. And I had documentation to prove that because it was something that I had to protect myself with. And then, I do read a lot of research on mobbing and bullying in the workplace. And it said that the victim is usually always terminated. And I was tapped on the shoulder on Halloween of 2023. So I slept for 2 months. I knew something was wrong on the inside, but I didn't know what it was. I was just tired. I remember walking out of the restroom the one day, looking at the HR area and just being like, I am just tired on the inside. I don't know what it is. And I also, the year before that, I had gone out with some friends for a weekend, and my one friend looked at me and said, something's going on with you, but I don't know what that is, but you need to figure it out. And that was, that struck me because I was living alone with two dogs, and my dogs aren't going to tell me something's wrong, So like when I come home, that was me. Nobody was there to like say, yeah, something's going on. So the burnout journey was a interesting thing for me too, because nobody really in my life had ever talked about burnout. So I didn't know what it was until afterwards. So it's interesting because I got let go. The next day, I was so grateful that I didn't have to go in there anymore. But, I was tapped on the shoulder, surprise, no performance issues that I was aware of. And then I slept for about 2 months just to kind of get myself back to where I needed to be. And then I decided that I was going to start my own business because nobody was ever going to do that to me again. So here I am. Yeah.
Okay, so regarding that burnout, and I really recognise and all of that myself when we were talking yesterday about this in
hmm
preparation, about how we've had some kind of similar experiences. Looking back, what was the absolute lowest point for you in the burnout?
I think that's a tough question. I was irritable. I was not myself. I was very irritable, and I didn't know why. I think I didn't didn't have the self-awareness to recognize. I knew I was irritable, but I didn't know what that was stemming from. I was in meetings for 8 hours a day. And if I had like a half hour open for lunch, somebody would grab that spot. So like it was just constant like meetings, and it's really hard to say what the lowest point for me was. I think probably when I got let go. I mean,
Yeah,
that was really traumatic for me, and I still am dealing with the trauma from it a little bit because it was an organization that I trusted and loved, and it really let me down.
feels like a betrayal, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and I'm still grieving. It's interesting. I've like exes. I'm better friends with exes than I am with this organization. Do you know what I mean? Like it's sad. It's really
Yeah,
it broke my heart.
yeah, it's heartbreaking, isn't it?
hmm
And I think it can also be almost, with my experience of it, it's almost like something unreal's happened, like you stepped into another universe. Have I died and just existed in a different universe? All of a sudden, it was that kind of shocking. So
hmm
I really hear that. Okay. Do you find that there's like lots of people talk about burnout, but there's not really many of them that really fully understand it, do they really?
hmm
Is there anything that you want to describe it as?
Honestly, I think recovering from burnout is similar to recovering from PTSD. I think, or experiencing PTSD, like, because I had a fractional role that recently I would go into the office 3 half days a week. Not much, right? Not much at all. What, 12 hours a week? And I struggled. Like, it was a trauma inducing event for me just because like of the experience that I had in the office there. I didn't want to, I was trying to protect myself from having that same experience. And then just the control thing, I think, was a big thing, like control of my time, control of, I have to be in the office, that kind of thing. So the burnout, I guess, I felt like the recovery was more like it was like a post-traumatic stress type situation.
Yeah,
And it was probably, and the burnout probably happened as a result of, the constant changes with the organization, things. And I spoke up. I always spoke up about things I didn't believe in or agree with. And then also the situation with the employee that I had, that was a constant battle, it felt like, because it was just she, it was rough. Yeah.
yeah, and it does, like I say, it does take a long time. We were saying it's a bit like PTSD. I wonder whether it actually is PTSD. And a friend of mine said to me, you look like you've got PTSD as a result of what had happened over a long time. So
Mhm.
it's very much that, very much like that sort of experience, isn't it?
I always feel like my experiences aren't, a lot compared to like somebody that's been through war and has experienced PTSD in that aspect. But I have to remind myself that we're all people and we all have our own experiences. So even though I didn't experience that, there are still situations that happen that are traumatic.
And the thing is, it's not what actually happens. It's the way it
Mhm.
affects us, isn't it?
Yes,
So,
very much so.
and we can get into that danger of actually trapping ourselves into trying to compare ourselves with something else which appears more traumatic. But
Hmm.
that's not really the point. The point is about how it affects us individually.
Hmm.
Is the
Very
point.
true.
So I think it's really important to be not to be judgmental about ourselves or anybody else in that situation, but just to
Mhm.
accept what has happened and do what we can to try and recover from it.
Very true.
Okay, so you were saying that for ages you spent a lot of time sleeping.
For
How
about 2 months, yeah.
2 months?
Sleeping and crying.
It's funny that the interesting thing about crying is that realization. I always find tears come when there's a realization of a reality, and perhaps something
Hmm.
we've been in denial of for a long while. And I wonder if that's partly what that was. Is perhaps while you were carrying on working there, whilst you were kind of aware that something wasn't quite right, it was almost like, well, no, there's nothing wrong. It's okay. Everything's all right, and continue to believe everything's okay. But in fact,
Remember walking in there and being and telling myself to be grateful for this opportunity every single morning. And because I try to practice gratitude regularly, but like that was something I had to like it was something I had to tell myself, I guess, in order to believe it, which is really interesting because it's like I did, I like driving there, I would be miserable. And I was like, this is not what I want to do. But yet, like, I am grateful to be able to go in here every day. And I mean, I was grateful, that I had a job, I had a paycheck, but it was like there was no other option besides that organization, and I felt because I believed in it so much and it disappointed me so much. It was really an experience at the end for me because it was just like it was gaslit for 7.5 years or something, and the bad thing was too is my team and I were out there selling that organization to other people. That was a that's a whole journey because my integrity is like my number one value, and I always want to do what I believe, but I did believe at the time. So, now it's just like any other company that, isn't
do you think it's actually put you off employment as a
definitely because nobody's tapping me on the shoulder again. I've never had the passion for an organization like I had for that. Like the other ones where I would say, yes, it was a career, but it was kind of just a job, right? But I mean, I lived and breathed, like I would be in interviews all day long and then I'd come home and I'd work until 10 o'clock at night. I would have people messaging me like, go to bed or get off the computer, because they would see that I was online. But like, it didn't feel like work to me. It was like I was just passionate, I was just driven. And then yeah, it just turned into not what I had hoped.
yeah, and it can turn very quickly, can't it?
Yeah, for sure.
So it can be like almost like a slam down
Hmm.
from one week to the next week. All of a sudden, everything's different.
Hmm.
Things are no longer the same. So you've moved on from this, haven't you, Danielle?
I
So
have.
and you've created your own business.
I have. It's been such a journey because it was in the beginning, it was like, okay, what's this going to look like? And I really didn't want to even think about HR. So in January of 2024, I started and I was doing career coaching, and people started sending me their resumes. And I was like, oh, this is not what I want to do. I don't want to do people's resumes or CVs. So it was like, okay, February, I'm like, all right, let's just get back into what we know. HR is it. So let's go back. But what does that look like? Because there's fractional HR, there's HR consulting. And I, what gave me energy and what I loved more than anything was growing and developing my team. So it's like, okay, how could I do that on my own? So I've gotten into HR coaching and coaching leaders. So that is where I get my energy. That's where I love my coaching clients. I'm there to support them. I love watching them grow, and that's where I am right now. I just launched Intentional Leadership Collective, and that's micro learning mixed with coaching. And I'm so excited about that because I've had so much fun putting together the micro learnings. So it's basically 3 emails a week that give you challenges to do throughout the week to kind of exercise your confidence or your trust, how you're building trust, those types of things. Just the things that, make a good leader. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right now, and I'm really excited about it.
Excellent. And are you any plans to develop anything further beyond what you're doing, or expand into anything
Absolutely.
else? Or
I want to add the voice, like a private podcast to the collective as well. So I think right now it's just the bare bones that I'm starting out with. Because like I said, it's kind of been a journey along the way to figure out exactly what I want to do. But I want to add voice, and I want to have just like people can listen to a 15-minute voice audio podcast or something like that on the way to work. I'm just kind of like to inspire and help and support and grow and develop.
I think it's a brilliant idea. In terms of
Thank you.
my experience with podcasting and everything I've learned through starting podcast is, I mean, one of the things that happens is awful lot of people go, "Oh, I want to do a podcast, but I want to try and make everything right before the start," and it gets into a bit of perfectionism, and it creates something that I refer to as what I call a China egg. It
Mm.
never hatches. The best way of doing it is just do it.
And that's what I've realized like with the collective, right? Because I was working on it for so long and it's like, Danielle, just launch it
Yeah.
and figure it out as you go. And that's what I've been working on. So yes, you're right. I need to do that with the audio as well.
The thing is that the journey is as important as the destination. And also, I think that there's an opportunity for people to, if you can demonstrate your journey through what you've been doing, people are more interested in who you are because of your journey than rather than
Mhm.
where you've actually got to. It's,
Absolutely.
we love human beings. We love those real stories.
Absolutely.
How people overcome their adversity, if you like.
Very true. And then because it's good to relate to people that, that may look perfect, but they've got a lot of, adversity that they've experienced and they're resilient and learning from that resilience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's
Hmm.
also people, especially if people sort of hear a story that's similar to their own, it feels like a real connection. It's an affirmation that it's real and that it's that we're not going mad. It's completely normal to have these experiences and
Absolutely.
to gain wisdom, isn't it? And maybe it's meant to be, Danielle. Maybe what happened for
I
you
have no doubt.
was, yeah, it was.
Honestly, my biggest moments in my life have been the recovery after the hardest moments of my life. I'm not saying I'm looking for more hard moments. Man, the growth that happens is unreal.
So you're looking to really make a real difference for the future.
Absolutely.
When just going back to the burnout side of things again, who was the first person that you talked to about it after it had happened? Bearing in mind, you said you were tapped on the shoulder and were
Mhm.
escorted away, and I guess you're pretty much on your own. So was there anybody that you felt you could confide in to discuss it?
The interesting thing is I was in therapy. I was in therapy for about a year or two prior to that happening, but it wasn't recognized. We talked through, I have anxiety and depression. So we talked through that. And I think that was what we were working through. And like the situation with the employee at work, and the bullying and the complaint and all that stuff. Um, but we never, ever touched on burnout.
Really?
And it was really interesting to me. Yeah. That's what it's really interesting because it's like that's such I don't know, it's just because it's a mental health therapist that's looking for those diagnoses, like the anxiety, the depression, those types of things, but burnout isn't top of list or even maybe on their list. So yeah. And I don't know if that's my fault and I didn't share, what what I was experiencing, or if it was, I don't know. I can't say that one way or the other.
Mm.
But at one point, I did question if I had ADHD, and we did an assessment on that, and I was leaning towards it, not like super into it. But I mean, that's another thing is like you have a really hard time focusing. You are irritable. You don't remember things. There's just all kinds of things. But and I can't say that I shared all that with my therapist. You know
Right.
what I mean? Because that just was like the way, like the day to day stuff that like was what it was.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I've done a lot of research investigation into basically into neurodiversity, effectively, which links into ADHD, links into autism, links into all those aspects or so-called diagnosis, if you like. Um,
Hmm.
and it actually, I come to the conclusion it's that it's an affliction. It's just that we're different because I've got some. I'm convinced I've got some neurodiverse parts of my personality.
I
When I
think there's probably more of us than there are that don't.
Yeah, and what is neurotypical? You can
Exactly.
associate it with just perhaps visiting a different country or living in a different culture for a little while.
Hmm.
You're neurodiverse to that culture because we're not
Absolutely.
used to it. So that can happen on a doorstep. When I looked into it, when I did a little course on it on autism, I
Hmm.
realised when I got to the end of it that actually it made a lot of sense in my life. There's some of the struggles that I had in my own life, growing
Hmm.
up, um, getting picked on at school, one thing and another, and that sometimes some of that even going into the workplace as an adult as well. So it's it's actually the revelation of actually knowing that and understanding it, coming to those conclusions is like a great relief
Hmm.
because then we stop pretending to be someone else. Don't we?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
so
You realize there's nothing wrong with you.
yeah,
It's just the way you are. Yes.
yeah. It's an incredible thing, and I say that the kind of the abuse and the bullying in workplaces is something I'm really passionate uh, about, and one of the reasons why I survived a couple of years longer than what I did was partially because I got invited to join the DEI, join the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion, and once I got involved in that, those around me that were giving me a lot of trouble suddenly became a little bit cautious.
Interesting.
Yeah, and they were, oh, what's this all about? What's that you're doing then? And all of a sudden, I was getting treated quite nicely. I think they were afraid that I was going to whistleblow them, which I,
Ah,
which I might have done, you know,
right.
and I did. But again, that's incredible. In fact, I did whistleblow on someone a few years ago, and kind of experience, when you look through all the policies and procedures of a company and say, oh, this is what our policy is around whistleblowing, and this is what will
Hmm.
happen, this is what should happen, what doesn't happen. And it made absolutely no difference whatever, because similar to yourself, yes, I was saying it was, I had that situation where I whistleblew on someone and then found myself with a disciplinary. So it was like there was an attack back. So it does happen. These things do happen. There's no point in
Absolutely.
denying that actually, or trying to go, okay, well, the rules are, the policy says this, and everybody's going to follow along by it. But it didn't work out like that, and it was really really shocking, really really shocked me.
Yeah, same. I had gone upstairs after eating lunch and the director comes, my boss was in town, didn't tell me he was coming into town. He didn't communicate well anyway, so it really wasn't that big of a surprise. But then the director came up to me with a folder and I looked at her and I said, "Seriously?" And she's like, "Yeah, can you come with me?" And it was just like, "Okay." And I grabbed what I could and I was like, what the hell, right? But everything I read after that, because it was a mobbing behavior. I mean, I cringe every time I say this, but is it Wednesday? No, it's Thursday. But on Wednesdays, I don't know if you've seen the movie Mean Girls. Okay. Well, on Wednesdays, they wear pink. Well, this was a group of people that on Wednesdays, even the director of HR wore pink.
Right.
And so it was like, interesting, very interesting. And to think that somebody of that, like, I guess, like emotional intelligence level can do that, but still be like in that position was really interesting to me. And it was, yeah, it's eye-opening. But yeah, the team had been built that I didn't feel like I fit in well. I was there to do a job and they were there to make friends and, do whatever. And that's okay. That's just difference. But yeah, I felt like it was definitely time for me to go. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. I'm grateful for the folder they gave me. I'm grateful for, the ability to move on.
Yeah, great. So people listening to this and watching this, the message from Danielle and myself is actually when these things come along, there's often a reason for it to happen, and it can be rather than it feeling really negative. It can be an opportunity to grow and to move on and to learn some new things about ourselves, learn more about ourselves, learn more about other people, and to be and to get that compassion as well. Get back to
Hmm.
that situation of compassion. So, Daniel, thank you so much for joining me today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
We've
And it was
had,
great to meet you. And I hope that we can stay in touch for sure.
yeah, I'd love to. And in terms of podcasting, contact me if you want to
I
get involved
appreciate
with
that.
that. It'd be really, really nice to collaborate sometimes with that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, as often happens with my podcast, a few technical issues, but we've managed to negotiate our way around that. So thank you for your patience.
Absolutely. Thank you for yours.
And I wish you blessing and
Thank you.
take care.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right.
Bye bye.
Okay, bye bye. If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow, like, and share. Thank you very much. Martin, Peace Unplugged.